Hey everybody, today we're going to go ahead and talk about effective vocabulary instruction, specifically with grades K through 2. So if that sounds like the video for you, then I am excited. I have some top tips and activities that I like to do with my youngest learners to help them develop their vocabulary in terms of breadth, so how much vocabulary they can acquire and how many words they know, and also in terms of vocabulary depth, so how well they know those words. If you're new here, my name is Susan Jones. I am a former first grade and K through 2 literacy teacher who now spends a lot of time here on YouTube sharing tips and ideas and activities with teachers like you. So let's get started with some vocabulary tips. Before I dive into some of my favorite activities and tips for teaching vocabulary in a K through 2 classroom, I do think it's important to note some of the research that has been done in regards to vocabulary. In fact, I shared this image right here over on my Instagram, which basically states that early vocabulary is directly related to reading comprehension in the later grades. Students with a greater vocabulary knowledge in terms of breadth and depth in those younger grades, kindergarten, first and second grade, tend to have greater reading achievement scores later on in life. Think about 11th and 12th grade. Their reading scores tend to be higher, their comprehension skills are higher, and then even in the older grades, think about second, third, and fourth grade, their phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, those scores also tend to be higher when a student has a larger vocabulary. So taking all of this research into account, as primary teachers, we need to make sure we are putting our best foot forward in terms of teaching students new vocabulary words and teaching them these words in a deeper level. So let's dive into some of these tips and activities. All right, tip number 1 is a relatively easy one, but it is something that you have to kind of focus on and get to the forefront of your mind in order to make it successful. And that is to choose your words purposefully when you're teaching in your classroom. Research has shown that in kindergarten through 12th grade, students actually pick up new vocabulary words at a pace of 3,000 to 4,000 new words per year. So as you can imagine, a teacher or a parent cannot explicitly teach 3,000 to 4,000 words per year. Instead, these students are learning these words largely through hearing them, through conversations, through reading them, through TV shows, and all the different media going on around them. They're able to hear these new words, kind of infer and process what they mean, and add them to their own lexicon. Now, when doing this, you're going to want to pick words that have easy synonyms. So, for example, you will not pick a word like photosynthesis and kind of just randomly plop it into your vocabulary. Instead, you might do this with a word like assist. You could ask students, would anyone like to assist me with passing out the papers? Instead of just saying, would anyone help me? And when you do that, you will say, would anyone like to assist or help me with passing out the papers? And so you're going to put those words right next to each other. You're going to connect them right away. So students will hear that assist means help. And then, again, purposefully and mindfully, you will continue to use that word assist. And then after someone helps you, you can say, oh, thank you so much for assisting me. Or I would love to see some partners today assisting their neighbors. Let's see how we can all help one another. And again, just using these words over and over and getting students to hear them, and then you can even ask them to use them. You can ask them to share how a classmate assisted you today, and they will practice using that in a sentence, and they will say, oh, so-and-so assisted me by blank, sharing the crayons or sharing the scissors, whatever they did. Again, this is a pretty simple practice, but it is one that definitely takes some time to get used to. It's kind of like those adults' word of the day calendars where like each day you learn a new word, and that can be pretty fun. It's like taking that and implementing that in your classroom. And now you don't have to choose a new word each day. It's more just being mindful and thinking about how you can use some pretty common words differently and how you can connect them to those synonyms and those words that your students already know. All right, so tip number 1, I just shared an easy way to focus on developing students' breadth of vocabulary knowledge and getting them to learn new words at a rapid pace just by being a little bit more meaningful in the words you choose to share. Tip number 2 is different. We're going to focus on the students' depth of vocabulary knowledge and how well they understand those words. So tip number 2 for effective vocabulary knowledge is to develop semantic networks. When we are teaching vocabulary to our students, we want to make sure that we are giving them as many connections and experiences to really understand what a word means, how to use a word, the different variants of the word. All of those things are very important in developing the depth of vocabulary knowledge. When a student, or really anybody for that matter, just hears a word completely on its own without any context or connections and how this word is used or where it's used, when it's used, why it's used, it can be really easy to kind of just forget about that word, right? We don't really file it away as a word that we want to use. So instead, by creating experiences, by having students watch videos, have conversations, hear the word in a book, use the word themselves. By doing all these little things, students really can understand a word better and be able to use it. So how can we go ahead and get students to do this? Let me go ahead and share a few of my favorite vocabulary activities. To help students think deeper about their word knowledge, one activity I really like to use is called Leave It Out, and it looks like this. With Leave It Out, students will get 3 different cards and they'll always work together with a partner. When using these vocabulary activities, the conversation students have about words is very important. So here you can see the 3 words are car, train, and plane. Students will read the 3 cards and they will have to go ahead and determine which card is least like the other 2 and explain why. For example, car, train, and plane, they're all, modes of transportation, but a car and a train, travel on the ground, and a plane flies in the sky. So that might be one example of a way that those 2 are more similar and the other one is least like the others. Some other examples might be dance, baseball, football. Now, all of those are sports. They are all alike in some way. They're all in one category, but what makes them different? Which one, if you had to determine, is the least like the other 2? Now, there are many different examples students might use, and they may pair up 2 different options. As long as they have a valid reason for doing so, then that answer is fine. They are showing you their depth of these words and how well they understand what they mean. Many students in this case would say baseball and football both use a ball, and dance, the main instrument is, the dancer's body. So that would be probably the least like the other 2. Another example might be coat, scarf, and t-shirt. By putting these 3 words together, this one is a little tricky because coat and t-shirt are very similar because they both go on the top half of your body, but so does a scarf. And also, coat and scarf are more outdoor weather accessories and clothing items, and a t-shirt is more of a summer or an indoor clothing accessory. The best part about this type of activity is, again, those discussions that you have with your partner when you are doing it. Listening into these conversations lets you as the teacher really know kind of the way your students are processing these words, what types of connections they're making, and they are developing their semantic networks along the way. Another great way to have students think about their depth of vocabulary is to have students think about shades of meaning when it comes to similar words. And I love to help students do this using a word gradient activity like this one right here. In this type of activity, students really need to distinguish the shades of meaning among verbs, or they are looking at adjectives and seeing how they differ in intensity. And just like our last activity, students will definitely do this with a partner or in a small group, and they will need to look at the 4 words they are given and order them from bottom being kind of least intense and top being most intense. And in order to accurately do this, students will really need to look at the 4 words and they'll need to understand kind of the different nuances between each one. Here we have some verbs. We have look, stare, peek, and glare. Now, all of these are similar to that word look, right? But students might, in conversing with their partner, say that peek is like, oh, that's just like a little peek around a curtain, like it's a small little peek. And then they might put look next. And then if somebody is staring at someone, that means they're kind of looking at someone for a long time, as opposed to the peek is just like a quick little peek. And then glare. Ooh, when someone's glaring at someone, that usually means they're angry. So they're staring for a long time, but they also have this intensity of being angry. So this might be one way that students go ahead and pair these words. I had also mentioned doing this for adjectives as well. So here's an example where students need to think about the intensity of these adjectives. So here's cold, chilly, freezing, and icy. And again, chilly and icy, you might have students that think those are pretty similar, or maybe cold and chilly is pretty similar. So you'll want to really listen into their conversations in determining why they put one above the other. There's not always a completely correct answer for these. Lastly, another activity I really like to do is getting students to think about different meanings of a word. And I like to do that with these multiple meaning triangle matchups that I had made years ago in my first grade classroom. They look like this, and basically it's like a little puzzle where students need to figure out the two different meanings of this word. So for example, bark, it can be the sound a dog makes, and it is also the outside covering of a tree. With these different triangle puzzles, students here are learning that this one word can have two vastly different meanings. And this kind of adds to their semantic map in a whole different way. Now they are hearing the word bark, right? And in their lexicon, they have bark connected to dog, connected to animal, but then they also have bark connected to tree, connected to nature, connected to grass. And so this is just developing their semantic network and their lexicon even more. It's making their knowledge a lot deeper. Purposeful vocabulary instruction is often something that is so overlooked in kindergarten, first and second grade, because we, really need to focus on phonics, phonemic awareness, learning how to decode and how to read. But all of this vocabulary instruction using the activities that I shared today and some of the tips about just being purposeful with your words, things like that are going to help increase your students' comprehension while they are both listening and reading as they develop and grow older. Honestly, I feel like I could easily make another 2 or 3 videos about vocabulary instruction with different activities you can use in your K-2 classroom. So if you're interested and do want to know some more vocabulary tips, let me know down in the comments and I will see if I can make another video for you. But I wanted to make sure I got this one out because some of those activities are not only engaging and fun, but they work really well. And again, that first tip with just flooding students with different vocabulary in kind of an easy way also makes a huge difference. All of the activities I shared today will be linked down in the description below, and I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give me a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. See you guys next time. Bye.